Hi there, welcome back. It's Tangy from Tangy Tarot here. So I thought I would pop on here real quick because I'm about to go out to a tarot reading event. Well, I am the reader at the event. The event is a party. Anyway, so I figured I would pop on here and show real quick the decks that I would choose if I'm going out to do readings at an event. And I feel this is important to think about because there are some decks that I might enjoy reading for myself or using for myself, or using in my own tarot practice, my own tarot reading, my own tarot explorations. But when it comes to reading for other people, there are certain things that I like to keep in mind. I like to think about the demographic of who I'm going to be reading for, the types of people I might be reading for, and overall, what kind of decks will give me instant messages, instant answers that I can actually translate. So let me show you the decks and we'll go through the decks that I would pick for reading for others at an event. I want to give a quick shout out to Stella's Imagination for this bat here. This is a custom themed bat that I commissioned from her. It is a tarot themed bat. It's got crystals and tarot cards. Super cute. So her Instagram handle or her shop name is Stella's Imagination. Thank you, Stella. So the first deck that I would throw in my bag or consider for reading for other people is the Radiant Wise Spirit Tarot. Now, the reason why I would bring a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, first of all, this is the only Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I own. I own a couple of other close variations, but this is the only actual Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I own. And so I would consider bringing this. I would not just consider, I would likely bring this as an option because, well, first of all, let's do a shuffle test, shuffle demonstration. The shuffle experience is divine. It is amazing. It is such a smooth and easy deck for me to shuffle. And it really helps me get in the zone. It helps me feel in tune with the deck. And it really impresses people when they see how smoothly it shuffles. So I would choose the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot because it is a classic deck. Some people really like using or looking at the classic imagery. Some people also like the idea of the esotericness of how these images feel. People like people just like, some people like the classic imagery, the classic feel, the OG, the original feel, the original images. I also would choose this deck because I didn't study with this deck specifically. I studied with the Modern Witch Tarot, which is a very close variation of the Rider-Waite-Smith. But I would choose this deck for a very similar reason because I have studied with this deck basically. I've read it a lot. All the books that I've read show this deck. So I'm very used to the imagery and I'm very used to gleaning symbolism from whatever I could think about, pulling anything from any of these cards, any details in these cards I can pull from and pull messages from. So I find that it's just an easy deck for me to get imagery. It's just an easy deck for me to get information from and get answers from because I'm very familiar with it. So, I'm not saying that everyone needs to have a specific Rider-Waite-Smith or Marseille or classic Thoth deck to read from or study with. I'm just saying that for me, I find the classicness, it appeals to me and it appeals to the people that I'm reading for. So that is the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot as one of the options that I would bring to read for others. Another deck that I would choose to read for others is The Way of the Panda Tarot by Kim San. So this is the first deck that I ever got. Well, technically the mini version of this deck is the first deck that I ever got, but I got the standard edition probably sometime later. So This Way of the Panda, one of my absolute favorite decks. Shuffle demonstration, of course. Oh, look how smooth and beautiful that is. Let's do it with the backs. Beautiful, just beautiful. So, because this is the first deck that I ever got and the first deck that I truly learned and studied tarot with, I feel like I'm able to read with it super well because I'm very familiar with it. I've had this deck for 2 years. Again, first deck. So because it was a deck that I learned from, it was the foundation of my tarot study, I'm very familiar with the imagery. So whenever these cards pop up on the table, it's not like I'm seeing any cards that are new to me for the first time. And I feel that's really important when you're reading for others. Sometimes I get worried about being tongue-tied when I'm doing a reading. And even though the people that I read for, all of my readings are free because I'm doing these mainly for friends and for acquaintances. But I would still want to find a deck that I can actually read with and I'm familiar with, because I don't want to be pulling out a deck that's like super unfamiliar to me or unknown to me. And then, the card comes up and I have no idea where to start, or I don't even know what the card means or how the querent could find information from it. I also find this deck very easy to read with for me and for querents, because even if a querent doesn't know exactly what the Page of Swords is, they can see clearly that there's a stack of books here, and there's a panda with glasses. So there's an idea of smartness and intelligence here. There are some cards that are a little bit more mysterious, like the Three of Wands here, but it leaves a little bit of mystery. So I do like that. There's information that the querent can get without knowing tarot, but there's also still a little bit of mystery. I also find that people really enjoy the watercolor illustrations. It's a really interesting contrast looking at this very modernly illustrated deck compared to the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot, which is, again, very esoteric, very classic, feels very old school. So I feel like people really, really like the watercolor aspect. And of course, people really like pandas. This is one of the only animal decks that I would consider. Personally, I'm not much into animal symbolism. I don't really understand the meanings or symbolism behind animals much, because I'm not really animal affiliated. I don't really consider myself very connected with or familiar with animals. But I do know that pandas tend to have a universal reputation of being lazy or being carefree or being very self-expressive or being very self-loving. So I feel like that universal symbolism that people generally associate with pandas is another reason why I would definitely choose a panda deck to read with people, even if they're new to tarot or even if they're new to animal symbolism. I also feel like, even if you don't know that pandas have that reputation, the way that the pandas are illustrated, it just sparks inspiration in me. I feel like it really sparks my intuition, I guess. So that is the Weight of the Panda Tarot. And I've been pulling these decks in groups of 3, these cards in groups of 3 to show, because typically when I do readings, I just stick to like a 3-card reading, perhaps 6-card reading if I feel a little bit extra, but I feel like 3-card readings are a basic, simple way to go. And I feel like, just looking at these cards in groups of 3, it's easy to kind of see interactions between the cards or see how they flow together to make a story. But yeah, that is the Way of the Panda Tarot as another deck I would choose to read for others. My third pick for decks to read for others is the Lightseers Tarot by Chris Ann. This is quite a popular deck. I'm sure if you've been on TarotTube for any amount of time, you've probably heard of this deck like a billion times. And honestly, for good reason. I find this deck very beginner friendly, very easy to read with for beginners. I also find it very approachable for querents as well. Shuffle demonstration as usual. I think you'll find with these decks that I've chosen that I definitely try to find decks that I'm very used to shuffling, because it is a pain to try to be reading for a querent or try to pull cards, but then your cards are like flying everywhere. The cards are not sticking together. The cards are sliding all over the place. It's not a good experience for me at all. So I definitely like to have decks that I can actually shuffle well, that I can use well in the reading. So the Lightseers Tarot, it's my definition of a modern classic deck. It is very close. Honestly, if it weren't for the panda, this would be my second choice, but the panda is my first deck, and therefore it's the first place in my heart. But I feel like the Lightseers Tarot has a very similar approachable quality. I love that there are all these vibrant colors, similar to the Way of the Panda. So this and the Way of Panda, them both being very colorful, gives a very modern feel here. Because this deck is more people-focused, it feels like it's easier for people to project themselves into the cards this way. I also really like the way that Chris Ann has illustrated these people, their faces, their bodies, their poses. They seem very expressive to me. This is one of my favorite cards, the Page of Swords. I love the symbolism here, how some scenes tend to be a little bit more literal, like this person with an ox and all their baggage, but some scenes also tend to be a little bit more metaphorical, like this person who's swinging around like big light bulbs. So I find that this deck is a little bit more scenic than the Panda or the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot. Because of that, some people find it more enjoyable to read with. I will say that this deck doesn't have a... sometimes people might not like it because it feels very boho, very like music festively, and that's totally valid. So I think, with this deck, just like with any others, just know your audience. At the end of the day, though, I also think as much as you want to know your audience, you also want to pick a deck that speaks to you. And because this deck is one of the first that I got as well, along with the Way the Panda, I am pretty familiar with it, and I feel like I can still find meaning in it. So that is the Light Series Tarot as another pick for reading for others. Another deck I would consider is the Spacious Tarot. This is truly another one of my favorite decks. I am probably saying that about all of these decks. Like, a lot of them are my favorite in some way, because if they weren't my favorite, I wouldn't want to pull them out to read for others. Going back to what I said about how I need a deck that I'm familiar with to be able to read smoothly for others. So, shuffle demonstration. These decks are a bit stiffer. You can see in the second part of the bridge, they don't bend the same way that other decks do. So the overhand is a lot smooth. It's a lot smoother though. All right, so the Spacious Tarot. Beautiful, beautiful deck. This deck features no people at all, and it features a few animals, or as I call them, acting figures. Like the court cards are the only ones that feature like actual figures or characters doing things. Otherwise, the rest of the deck is all spacious themed, which I find very comforting, very soothing, and I'm just very familiar with the images. I can tell what the intent behind the card is, what the intention is, and I'm able to ask follow-up questions and ask the querent, like, you know, how does this card make you feel? What mindset or feeling does this evoke in you? Because the theme of this is spaciousness, sometimes this deck can be a breath of fresh air. It's a little bit more abstract than the other decks that featured people and characters doing things. So some people do like the abstractness of it, the spaciousness of it. So that is the Spacious Tarot. I also really like the clean color palette. It's colorful. It's got color, but it's still relatively, I don't know, simple. I guess simple is what I'm looking for. It's a bit more simple. It's a bit easier to focus on like the essence of the cards. I would definitely pull this out for readings that I knew were going to be simpler or faster, because these cards don't have as much detail. This is the right amount of like symbolism and imagery for a fast, casual kind of reading. It can still go deep. I'm not saying it's a shallow deck. It can still go very deep. I'm just saying that it's just easier to glean surface level information from this deck. So the Spacious Tarot is another one of my picks for reading for others. Another deck I would choose is the Tarot of Mystical Moments. Now, these cards are quite an experience to shuffle. They're huge, and it's got gilding on it. Very, very shiny, pretty gilding. All right, shuffle demonstration. Ooh, that hurts. That hurts. So this is a deck that I would not riffle shuffle as much with other people. I would just overhand shuffle. Also, a tip for reading for other people, it's important to practice shuffling and practice doing the reading on your own first before you actually bring it to other people, because if you don't have a good grip on your shuffling before you go to the querent, sometimes doing things for the first time in front of someone else like makes it all the more nerve-wracking. So make sure you practice doing these things by yourself first before you do it for other people. So the Tarot of Mystical Moments, this is a collage type deck. It is beautiful. It gives a similar like old school or old timey feel. Now I will say that this deck it's not very racially diverse. It's got mostly white people in it, to be honest. I think it's got like a couple of darker skinned people, but besides that, it is mainly a white deck. So if you know that the people you're reading for, racial diversity is important to them, like just reconsider with this deck. But besides that, besides the people demographic part of it, I find the collages, the scenes, the imagery very fun and very interesting to read with. I don't really have a lot of collage decks. I don't really connect with them too much. But I do feel like out of all the collage decks I've seen, this is one of my favorite ones. I mean, that's why I have it. I love that the Queen of Wands here, for example, we've got peacock feathers, which is associated, peacocks are associated with like the showiness and the ostentatiousness. We've got the sunflower, which has some radiance, reminds me of an actual sun. I love that the sun up here is like the focus of the card. It feels like everything else is like drawn to there. So I feel like even if you don't understand these tarot cards, I feel like the meaning of the card, the feeling of the card really comes through through the choices of the lighting, the choices of the symbolism that is included, through the ways that the elements are stitched together. I think this is such a clever devil card, like this devil being a toadstool mushroom, and like these mushrooms tend to be bright colored because they're poisonous. It's like they're bright colored because they want to draw you in, but they're also bright to warn you that they're poisonous. Very cool symbolism. Death, I feel like there's a bit of vulnerability here with this person being naked. I was gonna say naked, kind of naked, but also just showing through. So it just gives me really interesting feelings. And if you're the type of person or reader who likes to collaborate with the querent, like you like to ask them more questions about what they see and what they think and how they feel, this is a great deck for that, because I find it's fun to have a back and forth conversation and spin different stories based on what these cards are saying. Stories, that's the word that I was looking for, stories. Because sometimes the fun of a tarot reading is the storytelling aspect of it, being able to weave together the cards into a coherent story. So I think when these cards come out on the table, it's really interesting to weave a fantastical kind of story and somehow try to apply that to our current situation. So that is the Tarot of Mystical Moments, another deck pick for reading for others. Another deck pick is the Tarot of Curious Creatures. If you don't like animal heads on human bodies, look away. This deck is not for you. All right, shuffle demonstration. All right, this deck is actually slightly thinner than the Lightseer's Tarot, even though the creator is the same. I'm glad that they made the cardstock a little bit thinner. All right, so like I mentioned, animal heads on human bodies. So this is one of the more recent decks that I've gotten. The other decks I've had for like 1 or 2 years at this point and studied from, but this one I got relatively recently, like within the past few months, and I didn't consider it very much for reading for other people. But the story behind this deck is I brought it to a friend's Halloween party. I brought this and a bunch of other decks to the Halloween party for fun, honestly. Maybe we'll do readings, but honestly, I just know that people like looking through card decks. I like looking through tarot decks, so I knew other people would like looking at them too. So people requested readings, naturally, and so I gave them the choice of decks to pick from. And surprisingly, a lot of people chose this deck. I feel like I did 3 or 4 readings from this deck that night. And I'm wondering if a part of it was because if you see one person doing it, suddenly you kind of want the same thing for because it's easy, the deck is already out, or because you saw your friend do it, so you want to do the same deck. So I feel like it kind of became like a train, I guess. It just, people wanted the same reading one after another. I feel like it was a fun deck. This deck was not one that I had studied with or learned much about, but I feel like once the cards came out on the table, people enjoyed looking at the images here. And I enjoy looking at the images here. The pressure is not as much on what is the esoteric deep meaning behind this card, but it's more about what this card makes you feel. The people who enjoy this deck, I ask them more like, what draws you in about this deck? People enjoy that it's a little bit more bizarre, it's a little bit weirder. But the fact is, even if it is a little bit more bizarre, it makes you do a double take sometimes because, whoa, this is a strange deck. It's still readable, honestly. Even if you don't understand what the animals are doing or saying, or the symbolism behind the animals, it still can be a really fun deck for you. Like, I don't even know what this animal is. And I don't know what the significance of this animal is specifically for the 3 of Swords, but I can still see, distress. And I see an egg. I see heartbreak here, so it still makes sense to me that way. So this is, I think, the other animal deck that I would actually consider, because it's not just animals, it's like people animals. I feel like not having the people faces as well does take pressure away from people to, not pressure. Some people prefer imagery that isn't reminiscent of like actual people for some reason. So this is just a fun deck. I love all the colors. I don't know if I mentioned all the colors in the other decks that I've shown so far, but just colors, colors, colors. Vibrant, fun, very energetic, full of energy, full of personality. That is the Tarot of Curious Creatures. I've got one more tarot deck, then a couple of oracle decks. And I will say a disclaimer before this tarot deck. This is the Somnia Tarot, which features people with their faces covered like sheets over their faces and their heads. Sometimes they have ropes around them, particularly their necks. So if that kind of imagery disturbs you or gives you the creeps, please skip ahead or look away for a bit. So my last tarot deck pick for reading for others would be the Somnia Tarot. Now, I have a very particular purpose for this deck. But first, the shuffle demonstration. Oh boy. That is a stiff deck. It feels like I'm shuffling actual photographs. Oh gosh. Okay. Okay. So, let's do the overhand as well. Overhand, a bit easier. This deck is a little bit bigger than the standard tarot card size, so definitely practice a lot with this before shuffling in front of other people is my recommendation. Okay, now, I have a very particular purpose for this deck. Right now, the only purpose I've used it for is for past life readings. For myself, I have used it for like regular readings, but for reading for others, I've only used it for past life readings. And the story behind this deck is, in October, I had the idea that I wanted to try to do past life readings. And I will explain that I am secular. I am more atheist. My practice is very secular. I don't really have a lot of experiences or beliefs in the supernatural or anything fantastical, really. So past lives didn't really connect with me as a concept. I am going to do another video that explains the whole in-depth about my past life readings and how I approach them from a secular perspective. The short version is, in October, I was like, I've kind of wanted to do a past life reading for a while. I've just never really got the time to do it. But I figure in October, since the theme is like lifting the veil or connecting with other spirits and whatever, I would try to get together some past life readings, try to get together that stuff for the theme of October. So I practiced a bit. I kind of turned it over in my mind. I figured out a way to do it. And then I offered past life readings in a couple of these servers that I'm a part of, one witchy server and then one friend server. And boy, they were very popular. I found this deck very, very, it blew me away, and it blew other people away too, how well this deck read in terms of past life readings. It was a very, very interesting exercise for me to do these past life readings. It was an interesting exercise in being able to tell a story and being able to read cards, being able to draw information from these cards. So yeah, so basically this deck for me has only been used for past life readings, especially again in a secular sense for people, but I find it really interesting in that way. And I don't think I feel like I need to or want to use it for any other purpose. So it has a very specific purpose in my collection for me, and I'm really, really happy with this deck. So this deck, the Somnia Tarot, is what I would use for reading for others, specifically only for past life readings. I'm going to bring it back out because I realized I didn't really talk as much about the deck. I only talked about what I use it for. So let us keep flipping through. The reason why I would choose this deck and why I enjoyed it for past life readings is because the figures they're timeless. The fact that the figures' faces are covered, I prefer, sometimes I look to not look at faces or not look at like the people demographics of it. So having the figures be covered makes them feel a little bit more abstract. Like, I know they're people, but it also feels a little bit more abstract, and it's easy for me to kind of look beyond my human biases, I guess, because of the way that these figures are photographed. And again, the environments that they're in, it feels very open. It feels very almost like blank slate. It feels like I could project anything onto these cards because the backgrounds, the scenery is so open. I also find that this deck being photographic, I feel like the way that the creator chose to illustrate some of these cards is incredible. The fact that this Nine of Wands, for example, is a bunch of candles, but somehow these candles are on the water. That's an incredible like contrast of like fire being able to burn even while being suffocated by water. I just find this deck very inspirational. It's very cool. The concepts are super cool. So I just find that's a really cool deck to read with. And when I was doing these past life readings, it was very interesting to try to spin stories from whatever I was seeing from the cards. So again, that's a Somnia Tarot for past life readings for me. So those are the tarot decks that I would choose. Now for my couple of Oracle decks picks, I've got the Believe in Your Magic Oracle deck and the Love and Magic Oracle deck. So the way that I use Oracle decks in readings, Not all the time. I definitely think about how much time and if the message really needs an oracle message. But the way that I would use an oracle deck in a reading would be as a button. Something to either start the reading or to end the reading. So let's do one at a time first. So believe in your own magic oracle. This is clearly a thick deck. Not thick as much. It's more wide. Wide is what I was thinking of. It's big. So the way that I would do this is I would do my 3-card spread, and then I would just take a card from the deck, either from the top or, fan it out and let the querent choose, make them feel all magical and involved. Pick a card from the deck, and then flip it over and be like, thorns, weave together the crown you deserve. And then I would, put that over here, put it at the top of the reading, and it would be a nice little button to button up the message and wrap it up. So I find these cards really helpful. Sometimes it can help to reground the message after we went all over the place with all these different tarot reading messages. I also find that the illustrations, I really like the modern illustrations here. I also like the body diversity and how expressive these people are. This deck does lean towards girls, really. So just be mindful of that. But, if your guy should be able to accept some girl messages. Like, some of these messages are universal, really. But I just find this deck very fun and very easy to use. I'd recommend this even if you were just doing a single card divination reading. I think these are still very fun messages and interesting messages that would be helpful for anybody. So that is the Believe in Your Own Magic Oracle. And the other oracle deck I would choose is the Love and Magic Oracle. This is by Adrienne Vita on Etsy. So the shuffle is very interesting. This one does not... Should I bridge? All right, I'm going to do it because... So this deck is a lot thinner. There's a lot less cards than an actual tarot deck. And it shuffles a lot smoother overhand than it does bridge. And I don't bridge it as much. So I would choose this deck. Again, similar thing where I would just draw one card at the end of a reading. This is one of my favorite oracle decks or affirmation decks because I feel like the messages are very simple and very easy. So I'm going to move over this way. The changes you are experiencing are really good. Happy outcomes are on the way. Revel in this thought. I feel like it's easy to read. It's easy to understand. It's easy to find different ways to apply this message to whatever we were just reading about. Let's see. Let's do it one with less words. You can have it all. You don't have to give up anything to have what you want. Sometimes affirmations, if they're a bit too woo-y or a bit too abstract or toxically positive, they don't work. And some people can be very, very resistant to them. Affirmation decks, your mileage may vary. Some people enjoy them, some people don't. Different affirmation decks work for different people. So just sharing, this is one that works for me and one that works for a lot of people that I've read for. So that is the Love and Magic Oracle. So there you have it. We have all of these decks that I would choose when I was reading for other people. So right now, I feel like for the event that I'm going to go to, I'm going to bring just the top 3 picks that I said I would bring, which is the Light Seers here, the Way of the Panda, and the Rider-Waite-Smith, or the Radiant Wise Spirit. This is my version of the Rider-Waite-Smith, my coloring that I like the best. So that is my deck picks. If you read for others, I'd love to see what your deck picks are and why you would choose them over other decks in your collection. So that's all for this video. I hope this is helpful. Hope this is fun. Again, I've got a video coming up on the past life readings with the Somnia Tarot, so I hope that one is helpful and fun for you as well. That is all for today. I will see you in another video. Bye!